Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. A warm welcome here from us at Alfatron Electronics. Welcome to our webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about our AV over IP solutions as well as our SMW42S. My name is Michael van Rensburg.
I'm Marinus van Eerden.
And we hope you'll enjoy our presentation today. So to kick us off, we're going to be looking at the AV over IP devices. Talk about our agenda just quickly. Give you guys a rough overview. Starting off with the Alfatron IP2HE and Alfatron IP2HD.
Then we'll be looking at the SMW42S, the ALF SMW42S. And then we'll be looking at some application examples for both of those products. And then a Q&A session, and then a conclusion right at the end.
Perfect.
Okay, let's kick off with the IP2HE, the encoder version of that. Mike, do you want to chat us through it?
So the encoder, and again, we're talking about AV over IP devices here. So we are talking about a device that basically will convert your video stream, your video input. In this case, an HDMI input, yes, Marinus. And it will give us a LAN port output, an IP output. So you can basically connect the device to your local network and
PoE powered. It's PoE powered as well as obviously a power supply. So ideally a PoE network switch. And then also the output stream is H.265, which is the new version of 264, of course. So we're looking at inputs like Mike mentioned, HDMI input. Then we have the LAN PoE port, output in essence in this case. You also have a local audio output to de-embed the local audio right there at the input. And then RS-232 as well, which then will switch with the video input. So you can in essence control a projector, you can control a monitor if it's RS-232 controllable monitor, and it will always follow the input in that case.
Yeah, for me the audio de-embedding feature is actually quite useful because you always want to try and see if you can monitor either the audio that it's streaming correctly, or alternatively you might want to amplify audio in that specific space.
Perhaps you have it in the rack, installed in the rack, so you could already de-embed it right in the rack. You don't need to worry about de-embedding it. It would just be a nightmare too. Then you'd have to have another decoder right there, or de-embed it before the HDMI input or something. So way easier, local audio output. That's basically it. We can actually look at the decoder next. They're both pretty similar.
In terms of how they physically look, they're very similar, just on the physical dimensions as well. And they're basically just the HD version is the decoder, and the HE version is the encoder.
Correct.
And pretty much that's the difference between them.
So basically, this is pretty much a swap around. So now we have a LAN PoE as the input, the video input in this case, and then everything else moves to output. So we have a HDMI output, RS-232 output, and as well as a far side or audio output right there at the monitor, depending on what your requirement is.
Correct, yeah.
That's basically that. On these guys, everything's PoE powered, all power supply powered.
So again, just in terms of the PoE, that really makes it very, very quick and easy to use because it's a one cable solution.
Yes.
So from your source, HDMI cable straight into your encoder, LAN cable, PoE powered from the network switch.
Correct.
Distributed anywhere on the property, where the network obviously goes. Pick it up over one or two hops over different networks.
Fiber links, anything.
Fiber links as well through the network switches, because it's just basic IP communication.
Yes, TCP IP rules apply. So 100 meters in between. If you're doing a straight connection, you can do 100 meters. If you are doing a switch, all the TCP IP rules would apply to that.
Yeah, perfect.
Then we'll obviously chat about a couple of applications after this as well. Then we'll maybe discuss the limitation or the suggested limitation with these guys. You don't require a managed switch for this. This is actually really almost a zero configuration tool. One thing actually we didn't mention, Mike, while we're on there, there's also a little button in the front of the decoders, which if you hold it in for 2 seconds, it switches this through all the available sources. Single press will also just show you the IP address of the device, and basically the MAC address name. So if you need to control it or whatever, easy way to find the MAC address of the device. Single press, you'll see that on the screen displayed, and if you hold it in for 2 seconds, it will just cycle through through all the encoders.
Yeah.
These are also controllable. There's an API guide for them available. So you could, in essence, also route through a Crestron, Extron, whatever third-party control system. You could always route, do some routing changes, some presets and stuff. Routing, in essence, a specific MAC address to a specific MAC address of a decoder.
Correct. Yeah. And I want to expand a little bit on that easy function, Marinus, because that really makes it a plug-and-play solution.
Correct.
You plug 1 or 2 or 3 encoders into your network, how many ever you need, and you can then do a one-to-many distribution.
Yes.
You can do one-to-one. You can have many-to-many. So it really, as simple as you said.
Absolutely.
Plug in your decoder at your display, and cycle through until you pick up the right source, and you're done.
Absolutely, and it's also modular. So I've seen it plenty of times before where you need 5 inputs and 4 outputs. That immediately forces you to buy an 8x8 matrix, because unless you go for a 4x4 matrix.
Yeah.
So no compromise. If you at a later stage need more inputs, you add another encoder onto the system, and that's it. So flexible, actually works out cost effective. Depending on your I/O configuration, it would be more cost effective, or could be more cost effective than a matrix in that case.
Perfect.
Especially if you're looking at HDBaseT matrix, because you in essence need CAT cabling to extend it or whatever. So this could be quite cost effective. PoE, unmanaged PoE plus switch, and you sorted.
Good. But that's not all, as they say.
In the business.
So we'll get back to a couple of the additional extra features that the AV over IP devices have. So we'll save those for later, that's what I say. But that's not all. All right. So next up is the SMW42. This is one of the new kits on the block. It's been out now, I think, for what, about a month or two that it's been available out on the market from us. And yeah, very, very good device. Take 100%. Us through it, Marinus.
Great. So we, in essence, have 4 inputs. So we have the 2 HDMIs, the VGA, and the USB-C input. That's the 4 in the model number, of course. And then the VGA obviously has an audio in, 2 HDMIs. The USB-C in is great for the new Macs, and a lot of other new Windows PCs also coming out with a USB-C Thunderbolt sort of connection that's obviously able to push video. Not all PCs currently with a USB-C connection necessarily can push video over that, but this will definitely push video out of a Mac, for example. You also have 3 USB Type A connections at the top. This in essence connects, it's in essence a USB hub. We also have 2 host connections with USB Type B connections. These in essence, they also switch automatically, so first in, first out. So we could have 2 PCs in essence run, for example, let's say you have 2 pop-ups, perhaps 1 pop-up with USB-C, 2 pop-ups with each an HDMI, and each a USB-A connection going into a USB Type B connection onto this guy. And both people could in essence but can switch between the USB hub connections. And also the other big thing is if you connect a device to the USB-C, those 3 USB ports will also pass to the USB-C.
Yeah.
So once again, I think USB-C is the future in that case. So you could actually, that's a true single cable solution.
Correct, yeah.
You can connect your camera, perhaps a audio DSP that's got USB audio or whatever into that, all into one cable. So that's the basics of that. It's got 2 HDMI outs. That's the 2 in the model number. So we figured out the 4, we figured out the 2. So yeah, that's in essence the 2 HDMI outputs. In essence, one is your main display. The second one could be used either as like a confidence monitor or whatever. There's an on-screen display which you can connect a wireless mouse to the front, for example. And then you can choose in essence what's happening. Either output 1 follows output 2 follows output 1, or output 2 could also be something completely different. You can route a specific source to that or whatever. This also has the ability to show you up to 7 sources on one screen.
Yep. In the multi-view function,
100%.
That's available
So
on HDMI output 1.
Output 1 could be multi-screen, correct? If you're wondering how you possibly get 7 inputs, because we only have 4, there's of course the built-in access point, Wi-Fi access point in this. You could also connect it to your LAN, your corporate network, and then in essence, the Android or the Samsung Smart View, Apple AirPlay, Miracast from your PC straight, so you could connect literally on Windows 10, connect a wireless display, and you will find it either through its own built-in AP, which could be disabled, or through the LAN, going to your corporate network.
Yeah.
RS-232, 2 RS-232 connections at the moment. One is for control, the other one is currently for future use. And that is the basics.
Yeah. So it is basically a wireless presentation matrix switcher.
Correct.
And it allows you to, like you mentioned, take your peripheral devices, your cameras,
Yes.
your USB microphones maybe inside the room, and bring that to multiple host PCs,
Yes.
and allow you to switch between those host PCs.
On a first in, first out basis. So
100%.
So that could be real nice. Once again, it's always an issue with USB devices and stuff to get it into 2 points. So that's integrated into the system. I think maybe we can let the cat out of the bag with the decoder. You'll see the last item on the slide at the moment is saying one Ethernet port for LAN and AV over IP. So what you could do, you could connect one of these decoders on the network. It will always follow or mirror HDMI output 1. HDMI 1 is also the one giving you the audio output. So this would also actually get audio output from there. And you can do a couple of these in using that as a source. Of course, that's a mirrored image, but yes, you can distribute that through the IP system, AV over IP system.
Because now that will allow you to, for instance, if you have a bigger boardroom, you can have your master screen on the front and use this as comfort monitors further down in the hall.
As many as you need,
Yeah, you can maybe even do it as a comfort monitor, maybe inside the boardroom table, or whatever the case is. You can literally send this anywhere. You can send it as an overflow room if it's a larger auditorium
or a company or something.
Correct. Yeah.
Like that.
And you can distribute that again on network to pretty much anywhere inside the building.
Correct.
To as many receivers as you would like. It's not a one-to-one. It's a one-to-many.
And perhaps if it's not a digital signage per se, but you could of course use it as a digital signage thing as well. You just need a DS player in the front end, but you could always then switch from a normal encoder doing your normal digital signage in your company, and perhaps there's a switch over to whenever the whole company in essence gets to see whatever the presentation is. So that's also possible, and you can run it through your organization's network.
Very good.
That's pretty much it. Now we're going to look at some accessories for this.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike, you've got
it. So I've already got it here in my hand. Been preempting it, Marinus. So in addition to being able to cast directly from a smartphone or a MacBook or a Windows PC, if you have a laptop or something that's not capable of doing the casting, then we've also provided a little HDMI wireless transmitter. And that's the SMW42D. So the wireless transmitter, which is this little unit you see on screen there, that plugs in as HDMI. It takes a few seconds, I think probably about 10 seconds to boot up. The little light turns blue, you press it, and it'll immediately cast directly to HDMI output 1. So if you're using multi-screens in a room, it'll be on your HDMI 1 screen. And then again, when the multi-view is active as an auto function, as more devices you add in, it will just reconfigure the devices, and you can have multiples of these as well.
Correct. Yeah. Up to 4, if I'm not mistaken. And the nice thing about it being HDMI, your PC, whatever you have that's got an HDMI output, in essence sees this as a normal display out. So no weird configurations required. There's no drivers that you need to run. Yeah. It's you plug it in and you switch over to that.
Yeah, it's a normal display device.
100%. So ease of use, and perhaps if it's a guest that you don't want to give access to your network, your corporate network.
That's also a good way to do it, yes. And then in addition, you'll see there's a bit of a USB, I think it's a mini A, if I remember that size, to normal USB A connection. And that is just for power. So let's say you have a laptop or a device that's not giving enough voltage, enough power to the device, you can boot it up with additional 5 voltage or 5 volts from your USB.
I guess in most cases that would probably be a Mac scenario, because Macs seem to sometimes, especially if you're using some accessories or peripherals, it might not push the power. I haven't noticed it on a PC really with a local HDMI output that's connected. That's more than sufficient to power that 5 volts in that HDMI output of your PC would definitely be enough to push this. But in case, worst case scenario, there's also the option to power it over USB.
Yeah.
Now the Mac solution, without using any peripherals.
100%. So in addition, we also have the USBC adapter, which is really as simple as the HDMI plugs in at the bottom of the unit. There's an HDMI connection inside there, and as long as they are in, then that becomes a USB-C solution to broadcast wirelessly from
Correct.
From any device that's USB-C video capable as well.
Push video over USB-C.
But definitely MacBooks, they function
100%.
Out the gates, as they say.
And very similar to the HDMI, it's not a, like some of the competitors perhaps would have a USB, it needs drivers and stuff. This USB-C is specifically for devices that's able to push video over USB-C once again. So once again, still no drivers. It in essence is just a USB-C to HDMI converter.
Yes.
And it functions in exactly that way. So plug it in and that's it.
That's it.
Cool. So those are basically the accessories, the SMW42S. Now we can look at some use cases for both of these products, starting with the IP, AV over IP stuff. So of course, the most basic would be point-to-point. You could do, in essence, it would be similar to an HD-based T. Of course, with HD-based T, sometimes you get 150 foot. With this, of course, normal TCP IP would apply. So you could, of course, do up to 100 meters or
260 feet, I think it is.
Correct. So yes, of course, that all works. As you can see on the monitor, RS-332 can of course pass through. So if you have a control system, it's very similar to HD-based T balance set in this scenario. In this specific case, unless you have you wouldn't actually be able to use a PoE injector because it wouldn't be powering both ways. So in this scenario, unless you're going through a switch, of course, but in this scenario, you would probably use power on both sides.
Correct.
But then the one-to-many, this is where obviously a unmanaged switch, PoE switch would be ideal. You can have a single encoder to a bunch of decoders. What, in essence, the limitation or a safe limit here would be for these, because as I mentioned, you don't require a managed switch in this scenario. So in most cases, if you're sending one encoder to 50 decoders, that would be the ideal. You wouldn't really want to have more than 50 decoders looking at a specific encoder, because there's obviously no, it's multicasting in essence through the entire network.
Yeah.
So that's obviously part of the zero configuration. It just makes everything easier than having to specify specific network switches and stuff. But 50 decoders is a very, very safe solution for this. Right, so that's the one-to-many. In essence, that is a modular distribution amplifier. You can have as many distribution amplifiers as you require. And then the fun part. Matrix or a video wall. So in this case, like I mentioned, this is in essence the same as one-to-many, except now it's many-to-many. So it would be you can have a bunch of decoders, encoders going to a bunch of decoders. That's routable and controllable. There's an app for this. It's called VDirector. It's available on the Apple Store.
iOS Store, yeah.
I'm an Android person, so I forgot what its name is. It will also be available soon, hopefully on the Google Play, and then also a Windows version is coming up very
application
soon
as well, yeah.
So very easy. That's in essence where you would you can do routing, very interactive. It shows you a preview of every encoder. It shows you, in essence, what's going at the moment. So every receiver, you could relabel your encoders and your decoders. You can connect an iPad and a PC. There's no reason you can't do that. You wouldn't be able to do that. And then, of course, there's also the option to build a video wall. The video wall, pretty simple. You go create a new video wall. You say you want a 2x2, 3x3, 4x4. I think it might even be going to 16x16 or something ridiculous like that. But in essence, if you're doing a video wall with this, you can have normal monitors with HDMI inputs. Put one decoder behind each monitor. In the software, you combine those receivers. It pops up on the monitors. It pops up a number and allows you to very quickly drag your receivers to the numbers, the corresponding numbers, and that builds your video wall. Now, all those receivers would fall away in your receiver list, and it would appear as a single receiver, which is your video wall, and you can just carry on and drag and drop, in essence, your live previewed encoders into the decoders.
And in this case, you can then have multiple encoders, and you can actually select different sources, like you mentioned. You can just switch sources very, very easily on the video wall if you need to.
Correct. Right, so next up. This is actually a bit of a preview of the iOS. They all look pretty similar. We've just been playing around with the iOS specifically at the start, but you'll see on the left-hand side, is your RX list. The first item on the RX list is, in essence, you'll see is called a 2x2-1. So that is obviously a video wall that was built in this demo. Just below that, there's a 2-all screen. So if you really want to just send one input to all the screens, you drag and drop. There's all your TXs, all your transmitters or encoders at the bottom of the page, and that is in essence where you can either drop that to all screens or you can drop it to the live screen on the screen. And then another feature we actually haven't touched on, CEC. These are also capable of CEC. So you'll see on the top right corner, there's a black screen and a white screen. That's display on, all displays on, all displays off. That can send CEC commands over the HDMI outputs. But also you could, in this software, perhaps put in a hex or ASCII code for your RS-232 pass-through. So if you have a projector, whatever, you can also add in those power on, power off commands for those, and that could switch on, everything off, in essence. So very simple, and of course you have the familiar gear in the top right corner, which is in essence all the settings. That's where you build the video wall, naming all your RXs and all your TXs, and putting in those RS-232 commands that you need.
Yeah. I'd like to maybe mention at this point, Marinus,
yes,
that we can actually direct everybody to our Alfatron YouTube channel. We have actually made, you and me actually made a very nice demonstration of the actual application. VDirector, we did a live demonstration on our 2x2 video wall. So you can actually go and view that. And we explain the process a little bit step by step.
Building the video wall, labeling everything.
Yes.
Yeah, everything's in there. It's really simple to use actually, and that was sort of the point of these encoders and decoders.
Yes.
Zero configuration.
100%. So please, when you get a chance, head over to Alfatron Electronics YouTube channel and check it out. There's a couple of other videos in there too that might be of help.
That's it.
Good.
Right, I'm just going to go back to the presentation. Right, so now we're going to look at a couple of, well, actually one application example, and we'll just speak about that freely.
Yep.
But in essence, this is the back panel of the SMW42S. Mike, if you want to run us through that setup.
Yes. So as Marinus mentioned earlier, if we start off, I'm trying to orientate myself, your top left side of screen, where we're showing the Alfatron camera, and that's probably a 5X that you chose there. Yes. Which again, maybe to mention, that's what we are on.
We're filming on a
5X Alfatron cam, so that can come in as your camera inside your boardroom or your meeting space or auditorium or whatever the venue might be. You know, small, medium, or even some larger boardrooms that we can cover with the SMW42. So you can bring in, like I mentioned, your camera in there. You can bring in USB microphones, USB speaker pods, any of these devices. So you can connect up to 3 USBs. But you would also be able to maybe plug in a USB hub in there and actually split it once or so more, and get maybe 1 or 2 extra devices in there if need be. Then, so that's your 3 USBs as we mentioned. You'll see then at the bottom there, the MacBook in this case, or the PC, is connected via HDMI and the USB-B host. And again, that's all USB 2 connections. So the host, as we mentioned, will bring all your peripheral devices back to your laptop, to your PC.
Yes.
And your HDMI will send the information, the visual information, back to the box. If you had a second PC connected on HDMI 2 and host port number 2, you would then connect, or you would then be able to switch between those two, either again through a third-party control system, which we would recommend, but you could also just switch on the front of the box and just select HDMI 1, HDMI 2, or then the USB-C, as we mentioned, which will be a single cable solution. So again, MacBooks, single cable solution, video and USB peripherals coming back, and it'll basically switch between the 3. And the device that's live, or the device that's selected, so let's say you've selected HDMI 2, that's the device that will take control over the peripherals in the room.
Yes.
Yes. So take us through the outputs a bit.
Cool. Actually, before I forget, there's one USB port in the front. So as we mentioned, you can buy these. These are obviously available separately, or there's also a bundle version available. But you can buy up to 4 of these. It's very simple to pair them. We have a little USB connector, a converter for the front, or you could use the cable supplied for the back. also to pair it to the unit. So very straightforward to pair it, plug it in. A couple of seconds later, it says pairing started, then it says pairing succeeded, and they are paired. So you can also, they are sort of interchangeable.
And then we sell these separately as well, so you can purchase,
how many,
like you mentioned, up to 4 that will connect to per device.
Yeah. Other thing I actually skipped over was the mini jack audio output on this, which, like I mentioned, is always HDMI 1 pictures out. That could go into an amplifier, that could run a couple of speakers in the room, and then you will see we have the 2 HDMI outs connected to LED displays, and then we have a third one which is connected to the LAN port. Like as you can see there, it's going through a switch. You could of course run it through your corporate LAN, which would also make it accessible wirelessly for wireless presentation to through your corporate Wi-Fi. But in essence, yeah, you can add your AV over IP decoder devices on there as well, the IP2 HD, and add a couple of displays to that. Once again, it's a mirrored output of the HDMI 1. It's not a separate output, but yes, that's basically it. So yeah, once again, it's pretty nice if you have, let's say, perhaps 2 pop-ups, once again running USB to each of those, running HDMI to both, running perhaps VGA to one, USB-C to the other one, depending on whoever uses it. It sort of covers for the legacy connection, it covers for the future connections. And yeah, on-screen display, which could be controlled through a wireless mouse as well, of course also through the API guide. And you could do different routings, display multiple connections, displaying single layout, 2 displays at the same time, 3, 4, up to 7.
That's it.
Yeah, so I hope that explains everything. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to post them. We'll be going into the questions very soon. Mike, do you have anything else to say?
No, I think that covers about all of the features in a nutshell, as we say.
I just want to double check that everybody got it, understood it exactly like this, but the host 1 and host 2 is in essence individually available. So that's in essence auto switching on their own. So first in, first out. So you could connect a USB on the one side of the table and HDMI on the other side of the table, and vice versa. They're completely on their own. Of course, but this is not special to this unit, but you can't have one USB camera going to two PCs. That, of course, is not allowed in the rules of USB, unfortunately.
Correct.
But yes, so you can definitely first in, first out on that. So as soon as the second person who connected disconnects, jumps back to the first person's PC, and that's pretty seamless, pretty fast.
Yeah. And then maybe lastly, before we get to the Q&A, as we mentioned with the AV over IP encoders, we are busy finalizing a video on the SMW42 as well. So that will be up in the next couple of days on the YouTube channel as well, and accessible to go and review. And we'll cover a lot of what we've spoken about in it, and also actually physically showcasing how it functions. And
definitely a look at the on-screen display, which I've mentioned a couple of times, which you can on the fly, in essence, do some display changes and stuff as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so look out for that video. We'll be posting on all our platforms. Yeah.
Correct.
So
So we just again have a couple of monitors here in front of us and our laptops and PCs just running the broadcast. We're just peeking over and having a look. We don't see any specific questions at the moment. But again, everybody's welcome to post any questions for us in the questions tab if there is any.
Yeah, don't see anything. So either we're really good at this or everybody's asleep.
It's one of the two. Here we go. There's a first question.
All right. Are there audio latency issues when using IP decoder audio out? If so, are there settings to adjust it? Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking about the SM42S. So there isn't actually any way to adjust those audio settings, but I haven't actually seen any delay. And also video delay, it's very little latency. We've set it up actually in the process of making that 42 video. We were looking at latency between 2 screens. We put 2 monitors up next to each other, going through our entire corporate network. So running through a managed network, running through a bunch of IP ranges. Yeah. And yeah, there was basically 0 latency between moving 2 mouse pointers. So there's no latency really on the video, which would mean there's definitely no latency really on the audio. And of course, the audio and video would be in sync. So I haven't really experienced any issues like that.
Yeah, the device will synchronize. So we talk about the decoder. It'll synchronize the audio and the video together.
Yeah, and then we have a question from Kelly, which actually, brilliant point. Are these units DHCP? Can you assign a static IP address to them? So they are DHCP, but they do have the ability to function without a DHCP server on the network. That's actually how I had it set up originally for our video wall, our own video wall. So then it uses self-assigned IP addresses, 169.254 link local addresses. And in essence, it's using the MAC addresses to communicate. So if you're controlling it, you're not using the IP addresses, but you are rather using the MAC addresses. So on a layer 2 there, and that obviously that's never going to change on those units. So you can't really set a static IP on them. Actually, I think you might, but you'd have to do it through the API guide. I haven't personally done that before, but there's no issue if you're running it into an unmanaged network through a one PoE switch, for example, where you have no DHCP server present. It just self-assigns and it functions like it should.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Kelly. All right. That seems to be it at the moment. Let's give it a second if anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, I think we're doing well on time. Okay, so good. Thank you. I think I'll close off maybe at this point, Marinus. And so thank you to everybody for joining us. Oh, sorry, clicked away from the presentation.
Too many clickers.
Yeah. So yeah, again, we'll say thank you at this point. Again, any questions, please get in touch with us. If you guys need us to help you with any solutions, or figure out what products would work, or want to discuss any of these products in a specific solution, please email us. Get in touch with us either through the website, or for solution-based requests, you can actually mail solutions@alfatronelectronics.com. We've got a full team of technical guys in the background, including Marinus and myself, that can answer those questions and help you guys with some designs.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's also Zendesk on the website. Like Michael mentioned, there's obviously a couple of emails on there how to get hold of us, and also Zendesk. So yeah, please get hold of us if you have any further questions. Yeah, Mike, like you mentioned, I think we did pretty well for time. We really wanted to keep it pretty compact.
Yep,
nice and
short.
Everybody can carry on with their day after from this point.
Good.
Yeah, so that's it from us, Mike.
That's it.
Thanks to everybody for joining us.
Have a good day. See you again soon.